Hello, this is Ben Baxter with Accent Software. I wanted to give a quick manufacturing software overview using the Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central product. So I'm going to try to do this as out of the box as possible and show you the different capabilities within the system. Some of the aspects that we are going to go through today are going to include product demand, the replenishment setup and what the system is capable of doing, the planning and MRP stages of getting product in the door, and then scheduling production. So once we've done our planning, getting it in a schedule and usable, and then finally execution. Once we have everything set, now it's time to actually do the work. And so we're going to step through each of those steps. And then at the end of it, hopefully you've learned something about the product. And of course, if you have more questions, you want to apply the software to your business, reach out to us. I'll have my contact information at the end, and I'd be happy to set up a time to walk through and understand more about how the software might align with your business. So with that, we're going to get started with product demand. Okay, so we're going to jump into what I think is a leading question mark for a lot of people is how does a business system handle product demand? And you'll notice I'm saying product demand, not sales demand, not transfer warehousing demand, not production consumption demand or raw material or kitting. It's product demand. It's based on the item and however that item is used, whether it's sold, consumed, transferred, those are all sources of demand. And the system tracks that. So if I go and just take a look, we'll use the same item we've been using. The system can show you, hey, here's your quantity on purchase order. So that's incoming, but quantity on component lines. That is demand generated for this item if it is a raw material on a production order. Quantity on sales order. When I ship, I'm reducing inventory. That is demand. When I consume on a service ticket, so I'm doing some warranty repair, that consumes the item. That is demand. If I'm using it on a job, if I'm using it as an assembly component, those are again, they reduce my inventory. If I'm transferring to another warehouse, that reduces my inventory. Those are all sources of product demand. So it is something the system is tracking in all of those different cases. So you don't have to keep a massive spreadsheet of how many sales and how many consumptions and how many transfers am I doing. The system is tracking all of that for you, and you'll see how that relates to the planning that we're going to do later. Now, I'll just go and show you quickly a sales order so you can understand what that might look like. But a sales order is simply one source of product demand. You define the customer and who it's going to go to. The system maintains the addressing. You can have multiple ship tos, all that stuff. But you're just simply listing an item on a sales order with a quantity. The system is going to track a planned date for you in terms of when you're going to ship that product out. So those are the main things the system needs. What is the item? What is the quantity? And when is it going to be needed? Those are the three sources of criteria for demand tracking that feed into my planning engine and all the other components of this manufacturing system. So this is just one view of one of the product demand sources, but they're all similar. They're all tracking those main criteria that the system needs to fill in and let my planning system base information off of. The next thing we're going to look at is the item replenishment. The items have to have a specific way that you want to get them back into inventory, want to create supply for it. And so what we do is we set up a replenishment system. So the system has purchase orders, it has production orders where you physically make it, assembly orders, which is very similar to kitting, again, a production type process. If we were talking about multiple locations, you also have a transfer option set up on the stock keeping unit card. So there are different ways to replenish the item and define the default way that you create supply for it. And so that is controlled here on the replenishment tab. When I select different options, different parts of the system become active. So because it's now set to production order, when I make this chair, it's going to be made to stock. So I build it based on my inventory level. I also have make to order, which allows me to build it based on product demand that we talked about earlier. So those are two for production. Very similar for the assembly side. I can assemble to stock. I can assemble based on orders and demand. So just different ways to control those aspects of the system based on whatever my replenishment system is for the item. And these are item by item defined. So I may have some raw materials that are sub-assemblies and I create production orders for them. Or I have a subassembly that is part of a make to order process, so it gets nested within my parent production order. So those are possible scenarios for it. Or just basic purchase, and I create a PO, vendor ships me the product. And then, of course, I can control different parameters with that in terms of how long does it typically come in from my default vendor. So that could be 3 days, it could be 7 weeks. I mean, who knows what it is for each specific item, but you get to define it on an item by item situation. And so it is relevant to the item being purchased. Next thing that I think is a really important part of any new business system, especially a manufacturing software system, is the ability to do planning. And planning is very extensive within the Business Central software. If we go and jump in and take a look at that blue chair again, down on the planning tab is where I can define one of several different planning policies. And so I can do my traditional stock policy. So a fixed reorder is when it hits to a certain inventory level, you buy more. Max quantity, very similar to a standard stock policy. The difference is you have a space constraint. And so when you do that supply order, you may have a variable demand to fill you back up to maximum rather than some fixed quantity. So you're filling the space rather than just buying a set amount. Then you have your traditional order policy. So this is a one-to-one supply and demand. When I sell some or I need some on production as a raw material, I'm going to get a single order to replenish that one. So it's always a one-to-one mix there with that order policy. Then you have lot for lot. I'm going to go ahead and select this one just because it has a lot of great flexibility. And the reason for that is I can still set up a safety stock quantity. Safety stock allows me to say, I want to keep at least, let's say, 10 units in stock. And then if I have demand that exceeds that, it will go ahead and buy for it. And I can consume out of those 10 and it will fill me back up to the 10 or some set parameter that I pair with that. So in this case, safety stock of 10, and it makes sense for us to buy these in quantities of 20. Okay, so my order multiple will be 20. Okay, now maybe that's extensive. Okay, so maybe it makes sense if I buy it in quantities of 5, but my minimum order is 20. So as long as I'm buying 20 or more, I want to make sure that I buy it in multiples of 5. So I would buy 25 if I needed to get 22, or 30 if I needed to get 28. So there's a lot of numbers thrown at you, but hopefully it's resonating in terms of the control you can apply to an item by item planning to allow the system to make you the most efficient purchasing agent as possible. Purchasing has a really tough job to figure out all the supply and demand, and then not only figure out that you need something, but then to carry out that purchase. And so that's where this business system and the use of technology really can impact a business if you lean into it and you use it the way it's needed. And one more great capability around lot for lot, as you can see, I'm a little biased toward it, is the accumulation period. This becomes really powerful because if I'm in a very high transaction model, I may want this to be a couple days. So every 3 days, group that demand together and then create a supply order to handle those 3 days. And then it looks at the next 3 days and then the next 3 days. And so it's buying in as much bulk as it can to handle the demand for those 3 days. I may be in an environment where I don't have super high transaction on a specific item. So maybe I want that to be 4 weeks. Okay. And so now the system is going to say, find that first source of demand, look out 4 weeks for any other demand for that item, and then create supply for it. And then go another 4 weeks from the end of that first period and look for demand and create a plan to purchase and replenish that item for that period of time. So, really strong capability, regardless of which policy you use. There is no right answer, but there is a right answer per item, but it's going to be dependent on your business, your transaction volumes, all kinds of things. So that's something that we like to help with and really dig into to work through those specific planning needs. And then what do you get out of that, right? So what is the purpose of filling that out on the item is we have something called a planning worksheet, right? And so this is where I come in and I calc my regenerative plan, my MRP plan to say, here's the items that I need to buy. Here are the dates that I need to buy them for, the different locations that I need to buy it for, what quantity. If it's a purchased item, here's the vendor. If it's a production item, here's the quantity. And all the related BOM and routing information goes along with that. So the system can give you all of the suggestions you need to replenish your inventory based on your planning parameters. So, really strong, really capable part of the system. You do need to lean into it to learn it and understand what the flexibility of the system is so that you can dial it in for your specific needs. But once you have this going, it's a really robust, very business value generating part of any kind of business, especially manufacturing ERP system. So once we've done our planning and we've figured out when we need to make stuff and what we need to make, so we've created a bunch of production orders or assembly orders or jobs or whatever your replenishment was, we need to assess how that fits in the schedule. So we've just created a lot of orders, and we need the system to help us sequence those in the right events, in the right timelines, across the right machines, so that we can make sure our production runs as smooth as possible. So I'm going to use a specific product for this called MXAPS, so Advanced Planning and Scheduling. And what this is going to allow me to do is take all of those results and make them where I can easily digest them on a visual drag and drop if I wanted scheduling. Although most people don't use the drag and drop, they're going to let the system's planning engine run through and plan out what sequence the items need to be in. Okay, so these are representations of different production orders in my system. And as you can see, the system's going to create the related links. So I have several production orders or operations that need to happen prior to this one. And the system's going to show me that so that I can better understand, why is this out on Friday instead of over here where I have availability? Well, predecessors are a real thing and you have to do things in sequence. And so I can tell by clicking on one operation, here's all the other related operations or sub-assemblies that have to be made prior to when I can make the next section of that production order. I can also go the other way with it, and I can see, okay, when I make this item, here's all the related production orders or operations that are going to be impacted by this particular operation. So that if I try to move this or I try to schedule it on a different resource, I can see the impact that might have on different operations or production environments within my system. Okay, so this is a view of it. Typically, this is used just as a kind of checkpoint. What you're really going to do is you're going to come in, you're going to let the system generate the schedule based on standard criteria that is needed to handle production environments, to minimize setup times, to run the same quality of material or the same color in the same sequence so that you minimize those changeover times. And then the results, you can either see a list and you can see, how are we trending? Are we seeing more or less late orders? Are we seeing more on time orders? What are we doing within our system to see how we're progressing. And that's where you can generate those what if scenarios and then assign which one is your active schedule that you're going to update all of your orders with those dates. Okay, so scheduling, huge important part of any kind of manufacturing execution system. Wanted to show you the MXAPS tool that we use to facilitate that, all again within Business Central. So again, one place shows you everything, runs through everything within the manufacturing environment. So next up on the list is execution. So this is what happens out in the shop itself. So this is capturing time. This is recording material consumption. This is recording output of the finished good into inventory. Those are all things wrapped around the execution aspect of production, and all of those have cost implications that roll back into Business Central so that you can see a history of how did we expect to how did we actually do and get those variance reporting. So while I'm in Business Central and it does have the capability to do the manual data administration through a consumption journal and an output journal, those generally aren't the way we deploy the system. If a company is forward thinking and they want to empower their shop floor, then we use a product called Shop Floor Insight. And what this product does is allows your employees out in the shop to use a simple USB scanner and clock in using an employee badge printed on just basic paper to scan into the environment. And then it starts tracking their time. And you've got a lot of great features for time rounding and things like that, but it's all about empowering that shop environment to get real-time data to allow you to do time studies, better variance tracking, more accurate costing, all of those great features that come with a robust manufacturing execution system. So in this case, I'm going to use a piece of paper that I've already printed that has all my employee badges on it. I'm also going to scan into a production order using the either a setup time barcode or the runtime barcode so that you can see what I'm doing in the background. So in this case, I'll pick up my barcode scanner. So now that I've scanned my employee badge, what it's going to do is it's going to pull up, in this case, first time clocking in, a blank time card. And so there's no activity. I haven't told the system that I've clocked into a specific production order, but I'm still clocked into the system. And I have to be careful because it will close back out to that login screen within 60 seconds if I don't do anything. So we're going to go up here to production. So in case I didn't have paper, if I didn't have the travelers with me with barcodes on them, I can still select what I'm going to do. So we'll go ahead and grab this first production order and first operation on it, and we'll clock on. Okay, so this is the same thing as if I scanned one of these barcodes that are on this piece of paper. It clocks me into the production order. And you can see it's bright yellow. That's just a setting that I have turned on to highlight the one that I'm actively working on, so that if I work on 5 or 10 different production orders in a day, I can see the one that I'm currently logged into versus any of the others that are recorded for that day. And it's also showing me what I'm calculating. So right now it's building up time in the background for runtime. So I didn't scan into the setup, I scanned into the runtime, and it's going to be building that up for what I've done throughout the day against this production order. I do have the option, like I said before, to record consumption. So these are bill of material items, raw materials associated with that production order, and I can see what's expected versus what's remaining and start recording consumption against this order. Now, in my case, I really like efficiency and automation, so I would have it where the system's going to back flush my raw material when I output the finished good. So in this case, I would go to my output screen. I do have the ability to enter scrap and a scrap code, as well as the actual output, so the good finished goods that I produce, and then register it. And while I'm on the screen, I have visibility into how many the production order is for, how many have been finished, and what is the remaining total that need to be output for this operation and this production order. So again, All of that data is in real time. So as I scan in, the system, Business Central, knows that I am clocked into that production order and time is adding up. So does the scheduling engine. So that MXAPS engine that we looked at before, it knows that. It knows what production orders are being worked on. So it's all connected and working together to give you the best, most real-time information that you can within your business system. Okay, so that's just a quick look at it. Again, a lot of the information is available here, but when we use something like Shop Floor Insight to really empower the shop environment, gets us more real time, gets us better time studies, we really push the business forward and we get a lot more accurate data out of the system. So that's it for today. That'll be the end of our manufacturing software overview. Hopefully you've liked the information. Hopefully you've hit that like button and subscribed to our channel. I'm going to throw up my contact information here on screen. Feel free to reach out to me. We love to take this software, assign it, and align it with your business needs so that you're getting the best information out of your day-to-day operation as possible and really driving that business growth. So thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.